If opposites attract, why do we have divorce? War. Every major religion tells us to love our enemy. Eastern philosophy says maybe the secret is learning to hold opposites together. And yet here we are, despite everything we know, all the technology we've built, still ping-ponging between extremes, like we can't help ourselves. Look at what we can do now. We carry the sum of human knowledge in our pockets. We can talk to anyone, anywhere, instantly. We cure diseases our great-grandparents died from without question. We can see inside atoms and to the edge of the observable universe. And still, we're deeply unhappy, self-destructive, divorcing, fighting wars. We're a species at war with itself. But here's what keeps me up at night. It's not which side is right. It's this. What happens when a system, any system, learns to hold opposites without collapsing? Could this be the solution to so many of our problems? Polarity is the tension of opposites inside a single system. Positive and negative charge, north and south, expansion and compression, order and chaos. It's one of the simplest patterns in nature, and one of the most misunderstood. Across physics, psychology, and society, reality doesn't move in straight lines. It moves through the relationship between opposites. These aren't enemies. They're more like dance partners who define each other. And when a system leans too far into one pole, whether that system is a person, a relationship, or a whole civilization, the neglected opposite doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Carl Jung had a word for what happens next: compensation. The denied opposite sinks into the unconscious and comes back through symptoms, projections, conflicts, sometimes collapse. In systems theory, the feedback loop destabilizes. In history, the pendulum swings violently back. You see this pattern everywhere once you know to look for it. The content changes: physics, psychology, politics, but the form stays the same. And here's the thing. When one pole gets overemphasized, the system doesn't get stronger. It gets brittle. In physics, polarity isn't a metaphor. It's how things work. Electric charge, positive and negative. Without both, there's no field, no current, no chemistry, no life. Magnetism is north and south. And here's what's wild. Cut a magnet in half and you don't isolate one pole. You get two new magnets, each with its own north and south. Polarity reproduces itself, fractally, at every scale. Thermodynamics formalizes this as gradients: hot and cold, order and disorder. Energy flows because of imbalance. When everything reaches equilibrium, motion stops. You need asymmetry for change. Modern systems physics shows that far from equilibrium systems, storms, ecosystems, living cells self-organize because they sit between opposing forces. Too much order, the system freezes. Too much chaos, it disintegrates. In physics, polarity isn't conflict. It's the precondition for structure and emergence. Long before we understood any of this scientifically, philosophers were wrestling with it. The Stoics understood that we recognize things through contrast. Health means something because we've known illness. We value wealth because we've experienced poverty. Pleasure exists because we've felt pain. To the Stoics, polarity wasn't a bug. It was a feature of reality. In Jungian psychology, when a conscious attitude becomes too one-sided, the psyche builds up its unconscious opposite. And if it gets extreme enough, the whole thing flips. Taoism says the same thing, just symbolically. Yin and yang, neither is good or bad. Each contains the seed of the other. When one reaches its extreme, it naturally transforms into its opposite. Polarity isn't moral, it's structural. This is why extremes generate their mirror image. Moral certainty breeds shadow. Control invites rebellion. Enforced unity produces fragmentation. The work isn't choosing one side. It's holding the tension long enough for something else to emerge. A third position that integrates instead of oscillates. Polarity isn't a problem to solve. It's a law of motion. Let's start where it's hardest to see, ourselves. I had a friend years ago who'd announce her intentions like New Year's resolutions. She was struggling, health, money, loneliness, and every few months she'd declare, "Next week I'm going out, I'm bringing lunch to work, I'm done shopping." Want to guess how long that lasted? She didn't want to be an unhealthy person, so she tried to become the opposite. But instead of looking honestly at what she was ashamed of, she made grand, unrealistic declarations. And after a week or two, she'd swing right back. And I'll admit something. This really pissed me off. I cared about her. I wanted her to grow. But the intensity of my reaction was a clue. Growth requires expanding yourself to include the parts you're uncomfortable with, maybe even the parts you hate. As long as you disown them, they don't disappear. They go underground, gather energy, and come back through behavior, mood, or projections onto other people. What we dislike most in others is often what we can't bear to see inside ourselves. I can't overstate this enough. What I'm describing is a uniquely human experience, and I'm no different. I was a hypersensitive little kid, empathetic to the point where at 8 years old, I could walk into a room and feel what everyone was feeling. I remember helping at a homeless shelter once and leaving in tears, sobbing, unable to contain grief for people I didn't even know. In the wrong environment, without tools, I became a troubled teenager. I couldn't make sense of all the feelings pouring through me. Sometimes it felt unbearable. In college, I wrote constantly, dozens of journals a year. Ordinary life felt like storms blowing through my mind. By my 30s, something shifted. I started distancing from emotions, stopped oversharing, then stopped sharing at all. If I journaled, it was very intellectual, process-oriented. I called this maturity. I thought I'd healed. But it wasn't healing. It was exile. I became a workaholic, more focused on career than relationships. I resented the sensitivity I'd carried as a child, and I was relieved to lose what felt like an unbearable burden. And with it went my compassion. I could be unkind. I had a reputation for perfectionism and impatience. More than once, I made people feel anxious, even afraid of me. It wasn't growth. It was abandonment. Being cold wasn't the goal. but neither was walking through life with an exposed nervous system. The answer was a third way. Enough spaciousness to feel deeply, while steady enough to remain kind. And by the way, this isn't solved. It's practice. And probably something I'll practice for the rest of my life. The polarities we experience within ourselves play out in every relationship. Some people believe this is the purpose of relationship. Millions of micro experiments between two beings on parallel evolutionary journeys. But what happens when we try to extract wholeness from each other instead of building it within ourselves? It's common to choose people who carry complementary wounds. You see this in pursuer-distancer dynamics. One chases, the other retreats. Each person's strategy to feel safe becomes the other person's threat. Or double binds, saying, be honest, and then punishing for honesty. Telling someone to be independent, then feeling resentful when they don't need you. When these patterns go unexplored, resentment corrodes trust and intimacy. And when couples can't metabolize the tension of opposites, they often solve it through separation. What if the goal isn't agreement? What if the better path is building a shared third story that makes room for both nervous systems, both truths, without collapsing into dominance or withdrawal? Polarity is everywhere now. Politics, culture, even employer-employee dynamics. Take any issue, look at the two opposing sides, and now ask, why is this framed as an either-or question? Given the complexity of the world, why are we pretending these are or questions instead of and questions? And here's the darker question. Who benefits from keeping it this way? I spent most of my professional life at the intersection of operations and transformation. Operations strives for stability, efficiency, predictability. Transformation drives change. There's always tension between these opposites. And we usually treat that tension as a problem. But tension is often the mechanism of growth. The work is holding it constructively. Take innovation in governance. Innovation explores the unknown. Governance protects the organization from going too far out on a limb, tracking progress and risk. They aren't enemies. They're a polarity. When organizations treat them as either or, they get the failure modes of both. Innovation used to be a buzzword. Now it's an executive mandate. But most organizations aren't structurally ready for it. So leaders invest, don't see ROI, then swing toward control, then swing back toward experimentation. Classic pendulum. Healthy operating models let opposing forces exist transparently. Good leaders do three things. One, they genuinely listen to competing viewpoints. Two, they review data alongside qualitative feedback. And three, they look for a third way that honors the logic of both sides. Leadership is polarity management, finding the third way that can stabilize the pendulum. And if you've been in any organization long enough, you've watched the swing firsthand, moving from a centralized to decentralized model, moving from waterfall to agile, back to waterfall. Overemphasize one pole, you get predictable downsides. Then the opposite returns as crisis, a reorg, a leadership change, and the pendulum swings back. If tension is where growth happens, why do we treat it like a bad thing? Because polarity can be weaponized. The same dynamics that generate creativity can be exploited. Attention engineering. Systems reward outrage and certainty. Modern tech amplifies all of it, making polarity a highly profitable business model. Polarity is a gift. It's the mechanism for understanding and growth. But it can also create inertia, conflict, and when weaponized, manipulation. So the question becomes, how do we develop the capacity to work with polarity rather than against it? I'll offer 3 practices. These aren't techniques to master polarity. They're ways to change your relationship to it. The most important investment is the one you make in yourself. Follow the tension. Be curious about your inner conflicts, especially the ones you want to exile. I'm lucky to have wonderful friends and a steady stream of social opportunities, but I'm also an introvert. For years, I went to extremes, social binges followed by weeks of isolation, because I hadn't accepted what I actually needed. I took cues from ego. I should go out. If I don't say yes, I won't be invited next time. Now I check in more honestly with myself. There's nothing wrong with preferring a night in with a book. Befriending the tension expands your options and makes you more authentic with yourself and with others. Practice 2. Both and. Pick 1 or 2 relationships where you feel regular conflict. Start by observing. When differences arise, do you dig in? Do you listen to understand or to counterattack? A healthy conversation should feel like friendly tennis. When it's done badly, it looks like racquetball. Resist the temptation to lecture. Ask questions. Reflect back what you heard. Then share your perspective with non-inflammatory language. In the beginning, you might want to stop there, just hearing each other out. Over time, you can start to co-construct third-way options. I coached a woman who argued with her husband about eating out. She wanted relief at the end of the week. He wanted comfort and fewer expenses. They built a third way. Monday night dinner at a local family place with large portions and discounts. Leftovers for Tuesday. Not a grand compromise, but a workable synthesis. And the relationship got stronger because they learned the method. Practice 3. Resist manipulation and normalize complexity in systems. Support constructive reconciliation. Do this in your conversations with others and your loved ones. Speak and listen with an openness to seeing alternative points of view. Advocate for this kind of relational understanding in your community. Expect and demand it in your elected politicians. Actively resist manipulation. Avoid platforms and people who speak in absolutes. Be mindful of language that demonizes the other. Align your support of information that prioritizes accuracy over virality. Give your attention to the voices that promote dignity over domination. Look at differences of opinion or experience with curiosity rather than threat. Force yourself into environments that challenge your thinking and avoid those that punish independent thought. And if you become aware of these types of feelings coming up, be curious about that too, and bring self-awareness and care to your interactions with others. Physics tells us no energy without difference, no motion without tension, no structure without opposing forces. Jungian psychology says something similar. When consciousness becomes too one-sided, the unconscious compensates. The disowned opposite returns through dreams, symptoms, projections. Growth doesn't come from prematurely solving conflict, but from holding it. And if you hold it long enough, a third way emerges. New symbols, new meaning, new capacity. Polarity isn't a problem to eliminate. It might be the engine of reality. And reality doesn't progress by erasing opposites. It progresses by playing them off one another. Too much of one pole leads to brittleness. Denial of the opposite guarantees its return. Stability lives between extremes, not at either end. This is why polarity shows up so consistently. These aren't special cases, they're expressions of the same underlying rule. Polarity isn't ideological, it isn't political, it isn't even psychological. It's ontological, not about what we believe, but about how reality organizes and evolves across scales. And once you adopt that lens, the world stops looking chaotic. You start to see the pattern everywhere. I'm Mary Schaub. This is Fractals of Change, wishing you curiosity, presence, and flow.